The prison ship moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was called the Eternity's Hold, and it was one of the most feared places in the galaxy. The ship was massive, built like a floating fortress made of black metal and cold steel. Inside its walls lived the worst criminals from 100 different worlds. Killers, thieves, and monsters of every shape and size called this place home. Warden Tomas stood at the center of it all. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were small and cruel, and his mouth was always twisted into something that looked like a smile but felt like a threat. He had run this prison for 30 years, and in all that time, no one had ever escaped. No one had ever tried. They all knew what happened to those who caused trouble. On this particular day, a new transport ship arrived. It carried fresh prisoners from across the galaxy, and Warden Tomas watched from his observation deck as they were marched into the holding cells. There were creatures of all kinds. Some had scales, some had tentacles, and some had bodies made of living rock. They were all dangerous. They were all afraid, but there was one prisoner who caught the warden's attention. It was a human. A small, thin man with dark hair and tired eyes. His name was David, and he walked with his head down, his hands bound in front of him. Next to him, holding his hand tightly, was a little girl. She was maybe 7 years old, with long black hair and a face that showed no fear at all. Her name was Emma. The other prisoners laughed when they saw the humans. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as one of the weakest species. They had no claws, no armor, no venom. Their bodies were soft and broke easily. Their planet was a small blue world at the edge of nowhere, and most aliens thought of them as barely worth noticing. A large reptilian prisoner named Victor hissed at David as he passed. "Look at the tiny ones. They won't last a week in here." David said nothing. He just kept walking, his daughter's hand in his. But his eyes were moving. He was looking at everything. The guards, the doors, the cameras, the other prisoners. He was taking it all in, storing it away in his mind. Emma looked up at her father. "Are we going to be okay?" She whispered. "Yes," David said quietly. "I promise." The warden had his own reasons for bringing the humans aboard. David had something he wanted. Information about a secret human military base that held weapons the warden wished to sell. The daughter was insurance. As long as Thomas had Emma, David would cooperate. That was the plan, but the humans were not the only new arrivals that day deep in the cargo hold. Locked inside an energy cage was a small creature from Earth. It was about the size of a dog, with thick black and white fur and small angry eyes. It was called a honey badger. The warden had ordered it captured as a gift for himself. He collected exotic animals from across the galaxy, and he had heard that this Earth creature was particularly fierce. The honey badger did not disappoint. From the moment it arrived, it fought. It bit at the energy bars in its cage until its mouth bled. It threw itself against the walls again and again. It screamed and snarled at anyone who came near. The guards tried to calm it with food, with water, with sedatives. Nothing worked. The creature simply refused to submit. The other prisoners watched from a distance. Even the most dangerous killers aboard the ship gave the small animal a wide berth. There was something in its eyes that they recognized. A kind of madness. A refusal to give up that went beyond reason. Michael was one of the few humans who had been aboard the Eternity's Hold for a long time. He was an older man with gray hair and scars on his face. He had survived in this place for 15 years by being smart and staying quiet. When he saw David and Emma being led to their cells, he watched them carefully. Later that night, Michael found David in the common area. The new prisoners were given a few hours to move around before lights out, and David was sitting alone in a corner, watching everything. "You're the new human," Michael said. Sitting down across from him, David nodded. And you're the old one. Michael smiled a little. 15 years. Longest any human has lasted here. How did you survive? By understanding something that most people don't. Michael leaned closer. This ship, these aliens, they think strength is everything. Big muscles, sharp claws, powerful weapons. But that's not what keeps you alive. What keeps you alive is being smart. Being patient. Waiting for the right moment. David looked at him for a long time. And has your moment come? Michael shook his head. No, but maybe yours will. That night, Emma could not sleep. Her cell was small and cold, and she could hear strange sounds coming from all around her. Screams, growls, the hum of machines. But she was not afraid. She was thinking. She thought about her mother, who had died 2 years ago. She thought about her home on Earth, the small house with the garden where she used to play. She thought about how her father had always protected her, no matter what. And she thought about the honey badger. She had seen it when they brought her aboard. She had watched it fight against its cage, watched it refuse to give up, even though it was small and alone and had no chance of winning. Something about that creature spoke to her. It reminded her of something her mother used to say. The size of the fight in the dog matters more than the size of the dog in the fight. Emma closed her eyes and made a decision. She did not know how, and she did not know when. But she knew that she would not let them break her. She would not let them break her father. And she would not let them break that angry little creature in the cargo hold. Somewhere in the ship, the honey badger was still fighting its cage. And somewhere in her cell, a 7-year-old girl was making a promise that would change everything. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. 3 days passed on the Eternity's hold. 3 days of cold food, hard floors, and the constant noise of 1,000 prisoners living in misery. David spent his time watching and learning. He memorized the guard rotations. He noted which doors were weak and which cameras had blind spots. He listened to the other prisoners talk and learned who hated the warden most. Emma stayed close to her father when she could. When she could not, she sat alone and watched. The other prisoners left her alone. A human child was no threat to anyone, and most of them did not even notice she was there. That was fine with Emma. She liked being invisible. Invisible people saw things that others missed. On the 3rd day, Warden Tomas called a gathering. All prisoners were brought to the main hall, a huge open space at the center of the ship. Guards lined the walls, their weapons ready. The warden stood on a raised platform at the front, looking down at the crowd with those cold, cruel eyes. "I have called you here to teach a lesson," the warden said. His voice was deep and echoed through the hall. "Some of you may think that you can resist me. Some of you may think that you can fight back. I am here to show you what happens when you try." He waved one of his 4 hands, and a group of guards brought out the honey badger. The creature was wrapped in chains, but it was still fighting. It twisted and bit at the metal, drawing blood from its own mouth. Its eyes were wild with rage. The prisoners watched in silence. Even the most hardened criminals felt something strange as they looked at the small animal. It was so tiny compared to them, so weak, and yet it would not stop fighting. Warden Tomas stepped down from his platform and walked toward the honey badger. He was smiling now, that terrible smile that made everyone who saw it feel cold inside. "This creature comes from Earth," he said loudly, so everyone could hear. "The humans call it a honey badger. It is small and stupid and has no chance against us. But it refuses to accept its place. It refuses to submit." He reached down and grabbed the honey badger by the fur on the back of its neck. The creature screamed and twisted, trying to bite him. The warden laughed and lifted it into the air, holding it up for everyone to see. "This is what happens to those who do not submit," he said. He threw the honey badger onto the ground. The animal hit the metal floor with a terrible sound and lay still for a moment. But then, impossibly, it got back up. It was bleeding now, limping on one leg. But it turned to face the warden and snarled, ready to fight again. The warden's smile faded. He had expected the creature to stay down. He had expected it to cower and whimper. Instead, it was looking at him like it wanted to tear out his throat. "Hold it down," he ordered his guards. 3 guards rushed forward. The honey badger bit one of them so badly that he fell back screaming. It clawed another across the face. But the 3rd guard finally pinned it to the ground, and the warden walked over and pressed his boot down on the creature's neck. "Know your place," he said coldly from across the hall. Emma watched. Her face showed nothing. No fear, no tears, no anger. Just a calm, steady gaze that was fixed on the warden's face. David was standing behind her. He put his hand on her shoulder, ready to pull her away if anything happened. But Emma did not move. She just watched Dodd, and then she spoke. Her voice was quiet. So quiet that only the prisoners standing near her could hear. But somehow, in the silence of the hall, the words carried further than they should have. "You'll pay for that." A tall insectoid prisoner named Victor was standing nearby. He had compound eyes and long mandibles that clicked together when he talked. He looked down at the human child and made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Little human," he said, "your warden controls everything here. He has 1,000 guards and weapons that could destroy planets. What could you possibly do to make him pay?" Emma turned to look at him. There was something in her eyes that made Victor step backward, even though he did not understand why. She was just a child. A small, weak human child. But for a moment, just a moment, Victor felt like he was looking at something much more dangerous. "You don't know what humans do," Emma said softly, "when you hurt something we love." Victor said nothing. He did not know what to say. Across the hall, the warden had finished his demonstration. He kicked the honey badger one more time, then ordered his guards to drag it back to its cage. The creature was barely moving now, but it was still alive. Still fighting. Still refusing to die. The prisoners were sent back to their cells. David walked with Emma, his hand on her shoulder. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He knew his daughter. He knew what that look in her eyes meant. That night, in their cold, dark cell, Emma finally spoke again. "They think we're weak," she said. David nodded. "They do. They're wrong." David looked at his daughter. She was 7 years old. She had seen her mother die, been kidnapped by aliens, and dragged across the galaxy to a prison ship where no one expected her to survive. And yet here she was, not crying, not begging, not giving up. Just planning. "Yes," David said quietly. "They are very wrong." Emma lay down on her thin mattress and closed her eyes. "That badger fought even when it couldn't win," she said. "That's what we're going to do. We're going to fight. And we're going to make them pay." David sat in the darkness and watched his daughter fall asleep. Outside their cell, the ship hummed with the sounds of 1,000 prisoners settling in for the night. None of them knew what was coming. None of them understood what they had just seen. A human child had made a promise. And humans always kept their promises. The warden had made a terrible mistake. He just didn't know it yet. David had been a soldier once. On Earth, before the aliens came, he had served in the military for 10 years. He had learned many things during that time. How to fight. How to survive. But most importantly, he had learned how to wait. Waiting was the hardest part of any mission. Anyone could charge into battle with guns blazing. That took courage, yes, but it also took something else. It took stupidity. The smart soldiers, the ones who lived long enough to grow old, they knew that the best weapon was patience. You watched. You learned. You planned. And then, when the moment was right, you struck. David was waiting now. Every day, he walked through the prison ship with his head down and his eyes open. He talked to the other prisoners. He listened to their stories. He learned who they were, what they wanted, and what they feared. Most of all, he learned who hated the Warden. It turned out that almost everyone hated the Warden. Thomas was cruel in ways that went beyond simple punishment. He enjoyed hurting people. He enjoyed making them feel small and helpless. He had spent 30 years making enemies on this ship, and now those enemies were everywhere. They just needed someone to bring them together. David found Michael in the maintenance tunnels on the 5th day. These tunnels ran through the whole ship, carrying pipes and wires to every part of the structure. The guards rarely came down here because the tunnels were too small for most of the larger aliens. But for humans, they were perfect. Michael was surprised to see David. "How did you find this place?" he asked. "I watched," David said simply. "I saw you disappear one day and followed the path you took." Michael studied the younger man for a long moment. "You're not like the other new prisoners," he said. "They spend their first week crying or fighting or begging. You spend it thinking. Thinking is more useful. What are you thinking about?" David sat down on a pipe and looked at Michael. "I'm thinking about how to take this ship." Michael laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. "Take the ship? There are 1,000 guards here. The Warden has weapons that could burn through steel. And we're just humans. We don't even have claws." "We have something better," David said. "We have the one thing no one in this galaxy understands." "What's that?" David smiled. It was a strange smile, cold and dangerous. Stubbornness. Over the next 2 weeks, David built his network. He moved carefully, talking to one prisoner at a time. He found the ones who were smart. He found the ones who were angry. He found the ones who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. There was Victor, the insectoid who had mocked Emma. He had been a general once, before he was captured. He still had contacts among the other prisoners, and he still knew how to organize a fighting force. There was a creature named Robert, a massive being made of living stone. He had the strength to tear through walls, but he had never used it because he had no hope. David gave him hope. There was a female alien named Lisa, who had 4 arms and skin the color of midnight. She knew the ship's computer systems better than anyone, because she had been forced to work in the Warden's control room for years. She hated Tomas more than anyone. One by one, David brought them together. He did not promise them easy victory. He did not promise them safety. He promised them only one thing, a chance to fight back. "Humans have a saying," he told them one night, gathered in the darkness of the maintenance tunnels. "Better to die on your feet than live on your knees." I am not asking you to die. I am asking you to stand up. I am asking you to remember who you were before they put you in chains. Victor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Why should we trust you? You are small and weak. Your species is nothing in this galaxy." David looked at him calmly. "My species walked on the moon before we could cure the common cold. We split the atom before we understood our own minds. We are small, yes. We are weak, yes. But we are also the most stubborn creatures in the universe. When we want something, we do not stop until we get it." He paused and looked around at the gathered prisoners. "The Warden thinks he has broken you. He thinks you will never fight back. But I know something he does not. I know that every single one of you still has fire inside. You just need someone to light the match." The prisoners looked at each other. For years, they had lived in fear. For years, they had accepted their fate. But now, looking at this small human with the cold eyes and the steady voice, they felt something they had not felt in a long time. They felt hope. Emma came to the tunnels that night. She had been doing her own work, watching the guards and learning their weaknesses. She was small enough to go places no one else could, and she had a memory that forgot nothing. The warden leaves his quarters at the same time every day, she reported. There are exactly 47 steps between his door and the control room. He always takes the same path. Michael shook his head in amazement. How does a 7-year-old count steps? My dad taught me, Emma said simply. He said that knowing your enemy is half the battle. The other half is making them think they've already won. David put his hand on his daughter's head. That's my girl. The plan came together slowly. Lisa would disable the ship's main systems at the right moment. Victor would organize the prisoners into fighting groups. Robert would break through the doors that stood between them and freedom. And David would lead them all. But there was one more piece to the puzzle. One more weapon they needed. The honey badger, Emma said one night. We need to free it. The other prisoners looked at her like she was crazy. That animal? Victor said. It is small and wounded. What use could it possibly be? Emma looked at him with those calm, steady eyes. It never gave up, she said. Even when they hurt it. Even when they threw it on the ground and stepped on its neck. It never stopped fighting. That's what we need. Not just a weapon. A symbol. Something to remind us what we're fighting for. David nodded slowly. She's right. The honey badger showed more courage than any of us. If we free it, we free ourselves. The night of the uprising was set. Everything was in place. The prisoners were ready. The plan was perfect, but David knew that no plan survived contact with the enemy. Something would go wrong. Something always went wrong. He just had to be ready to adapt when it did. That was what humans did. They adapted. They survived. They refused to give up, no matter what the universe threw at them. The warden had no idea what was coming. And by the time he figured it out, it would already be too late. The lights went out at exactly midnight. One moment, the prison ship was humming with its usual noise. Guards walking their patrols. Cameras watching every corner. Prisoners sleeping in their cells. The next moment, everything was dark and silent. In the control room, a guard looked at his screens in confusion. What happened? He asked. Before anyone could answer, the door behind him exploded inward. Robert, the creature made of living stone, came through it like a hurricane. His massive fist swung left and right, and guards flew across the room like toys. Lisa ran in behind him, her 4 hands already moving across the control panels. Security systems are down, she reported. Cell doors opening in 3, 2, 1. All across the ship, doors slid open. 1,000 prisoners stepped out of their cells, blinking in the darkness. For a moment, none of them moved. They had been locked up for so long that freedom felt strange and frightening. Then Victor's voice echoed through the corridors. Now, move now. To the main hall. The uprising had begun. David moved through the chaos like a ghost. He had memorized every path, every shortcut, every hiding place on the ship. He knew exactly where he needed to go. The cargo hold. The honey badger. Emma was right behind him. He had tried to make her stay somewhere safe, but she had refused. I made a promise, she said. I'm going to keep it. David did not argue. He knew better than to try. They reached the cargo hold just as the emergency lights flickered on. The room was bathed in red, making everything look like it was covered in blood. The honey badger's cage was in the corner, and the creature inside was already awake, already fighting against the bars. David ran to the cage and looked at the controls. They were locked with a code he did not know. Stand back, he said. He picked up a metal rod from the floor and swung it at the control panel with all his strength. Sparks flew everywhere. The panel cracked. He swung again and again, until finally the cage door slid open. The honey badger did not hesitate. It shot out of the cage like a bullet, all teeth and claws and fury. For a moment, David thought it might attack them. But then Emma stepped forward and knelt down. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're friends. We're going to fight together." The honey badger looked at her. Something passed between them. An understanding. A shared anger. A shared refusal to surrender. The creature walked over to Emma and sat at her feet. David shook his head in amazement. "How did you do that?" "I didn't do anything," Emma said. "It knows. Animals always know." They moved toward the main hall together. The sounds of battle were everywhere now. Screams, explosions, the crash of bodies against walls. The prisoners were fighting with everything they had. After years of being beaten down, they finally had a chance to fight back, and they were taking it with both hands. Warden Tomas was in the control room when the attack began. At first, he did not understand what was happening. His screens went dark. His communications went dead. By the time he realized that this was a coordinated attack, it was already too late. How is this possible? He screamed at his guards. They are prisoners. They are nothing. But his guards were gone. Some had run. Some had been defeated. And some, he realized with horror, had joined the other side. Tomas grabbed a weapon and ran for the bridge. If he could get there, he could seal himself in. He could call for help from other ships. He could survive. He almost made it. David was waiting for him in the corridor outside the bridge. Behind David stood a wall of prisoners. Victor with his mandibles clicking eagerly. Robert with his stone fists raised. Lisa with a captured weapon in each of her 4 hands. And at the front, a 7-year-old girl with a honey badger at her feet. Tomas stopped. His eyes went wide. "This is impossible," he whispered. "You are humans. You are weak. You are nothing." David stepped forward. His voice was calm, but there was iron underneath it. "You made a mistake," he said. "You thought because we are small, we are weak. You thought because we have no claws, we are helpless. But let me tell you something about humans. We are the species that hunted mammoths with sticks and stones. We are the species that crossed oceans in boats made of wood. We are the species that went to the moon in a tin, can held together with hope and math." He stepped closer. The warden stepped back. "We don't have claws. We don't have armor. We don't have venom or wings or scales. But we have something better. We have each other. We make allies. We build teams. We turn enemies into friends and strangers into family." He pointed at the army behind him. "Every single one of these prisoners was alone before we came. You made sure of that. You kept them afraid and divided because you knew that together they were stronger than you. But you forgot one thing. Humans are the ultimate social species. It's what we do. We bring people together." The warden raised his weapon. His hands were shaking. "Stay back," he said. "I will kill you." Emma stepped forward. The honey badger walked with her, its teeth bared, its eyes fixed on the creature who had heard it. "I told you," Emma said quietly. "I told you that you would pay." The warden looked at her. At the small human child he had dismissed as nothing. At the wounded animal he had tortured for entertainment. At the army of prisoners he had thought were broken beyond repair. And for the first time in his long, cruel life, Warden Tomas felt true fear. The honey badger moved first. It shot forward like lightning, all teeth and claws and fury. The warden screamed and fell backward, dropping his weapon. Before he could get up, Robert was there. His massive, stone hands pinning the warden to the floor. David picked up the fallen weapon and pointed it at the warden's head. "Your reign is over," he said simply. The prisoners cheered. The sound echoed through the corridors of the ship, through the cells and the halls and the tunnels. It was the sound of freedom, the sound of hope, the sound of people who had been told they were nothing finally proving they were something. Emma knelt down and picked up the honey badger. It was breathing hard, but it was alive. It was victorious. "We did it," she whispered to the creature. "We made them pay." The honey badger made a small sound. It might have been agreement. It might have been satisfaction. Or it might have just been the sound of an animal that had finally, after all this time, found a home. David looked at his daughter and the impossible army they had built together. He thought about everything they had been through, everything they had survived. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The galaxy is going to learn something new about humans today." And he was right. The prison ship had a new name now. They called it the Free Horizon. It had been 3 months since the uprising. 3 months since a handful of humans and a small angry animal had done what the entire galaxy thought was impossible. The news had spread from system to system, planet to planet, whispered in bars and shouted in streets. The unbreakable prison had been broken. The untouchable Warden had been touched. And it had all started with a child's quiet promise. David stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the stars. He had never wanted to be a captain. He had never wanted to be a leader. He had only wanted to keep his daughter safe. But life had other plans. And now he was responsible for a crew of 300 former prisoners who had nowhere else to go. Michael walked up beside him. The older man had become David's second in command, his advisor, his friend. In the months since the uprising, they had grown as close as brothers. "We have another request," Michael said. "A mining colony near the outer rim. They say their workers are being treated like slaves. They want our help." David sighed. This was happening more and more often. Word of what they had done on the Eternity's Hold had spread, and now people were looking to them for help. People who had no one else to turn to. "How many workers?" he asked. "About 500. Mostly from smaller species. The kind that get pushed around." David thought about it. They had supplies to last another month. Their ship was on now, taken from the Warden's own stockpile. They had a crew that was loyal and fierce and ready to fight. But every mission was a risk. Every battle could be their last thought. Then he thought about Emma, about the promise she had made in that prison cell, about the honey badger that had refused to give up. "Tell them we're coming," he said. Emma was in the cargo bay when Victor found her. She was playing with Fury, which was what she had named the honey badger. The creature had healed well over the past months. Its fur was thick and shiny now, and its eyes were bright. But it was still fierce. It still snarled at anyone who came too close. Anyone except Emma. Victor stood at a respectful distance. The insectoid general had changed since the uprising. He was quieter now, more thoughtful. He had seen something that night in the prison. He had seen a child face down a monster and win. It had changed how he thought about everything. "Little human," he said, his mandibles clicking softly. "May I speak with you?" Emma looked up. "Of course." Victor sat down across from her, folding his long legs underneath him. "I have been thinking about what you said. That night, when the Warden hurt your animal. You told me I did not know what humans do when you hurt something they love. I remember. I think I understand now." Victor paused, searching for the right words. "My species, we fight for territory, for resources, for power. These are logical things, things that make sense. But humans, you fight for each other. You fight for creatures that are not even your own kind. That is something I have never seen before." Emma scratched Fury behind the ears. The honey badger made a sound that was almost like purring. "My mom used to tell me a story," Emma said, "about a long time ago on Earth, before humans could even write. There was a boy who found a wolf pup whose mother had died. The boy could have left it to die. It would have been the smart thing to do. Wolves were dangerous. They killed humans. But the boy took the pup home anyway. He fed it. He raised it. He made it part of his family. She looked up at Victor with those calm, steady eyes that still made him uneasy. That wolf became the first dog. And dogs became our partners, our helpers, our friends. They guarded our homes. They helped us hunt. They kept us warm at night. All because one boy decided that being kind was more important than being safe. Victor was silent for a long moment. "Your species is very strange," he finally said. Emma smiled. "I know. That's what makes us strong." The story of the Free Horizon spread across the galaxy like fire. It changed things. In ways big and small, it changed the way aliens thought about humans. On a diplomatic station near the center of the galaxy, alien ambassadors gathered to discuss what had happened. A human representative was there for the first time, and the other species watched her carefully. "This uprising," one ambassador said, "it has caused much concern. Some are saying that humans are more dangerous than we thought." The human representative, a woman named Rachel, nodded calmly. "We are not dangerous to those who treat us well. We are only dangerous to those who hurt the things we love. But how can we know what you love? You seem to love everything. Animals, machines, ideas, strangers. You even love your enemies sometimes." Rachel smiled. "You're right. We do love easily. It's one of our greatest weaknesses. But it's also our greatest strength. Because when you love easily, you build connections. And connections become alliances. And alliances become armies." She leaned forward. "Every species in this galaxy has tried to conquer through force, through fear, through superior weapons and stronger bodies. But humans? We conquer through friendship. We walk onto your planets, and we meet your children, and we pet your animals, and we ask about your families. And before you know it, you're fighting beside us instead of against us." The ambassadors looked at each other nervously. This was not what they had expected. This was not how powerful species were supposed to behave. On the Free Horizon, Emma stood at the viewport and looked out at the stars. Fury sat at her feet, calm and content. In the distance, she could see the mining colony they were heading toward. More people who needed help. More people who had been told they were weak and small and worthless. Her father came up beside her and put his hand on her shoulder. "Are you ready?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Always." David smiled. He thought about everything that had brought them here. The prison, the warden, the honey badger that had refused to give up, his daughter's quiet promise. "You know," he said, "when you were born, I was afraid. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and humans are so small compared to everything else. I worried that you would grow up scared, that the universe would crush you." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "But I was wrong. You're not scared of anything. And I think I finally understand why. It's not because you don't know how dangerous the universe is. It's because you know that no matter how dangerous it gets, you'll never face it alone." Emma leaned against her father. Fury pressed against her legs. Behind them, the crew of the Free Horizon prepared for another mission, another battle, another chance to show the galaxy what humans could do. "The universe is big," Emma said softly. "But so is our family." And out in the darkness of space, the legend of the humans continued to grow. The species that loved too easily. The species that fought for the weak. The species that had looked at a small, angry animal in a cage and seen a friend instead of a beast. They were coming. And the galaxy would never be the same.